The blizzard on Kepler 442b wasn't supposed to happen for another 3 weeks. Alexander checked his weather terminal again, watching red alerts flash across the holographic display. Outside the reinforced windows of his research outpost, the alien world had transformed into a white hell. Crystalline snow whipping horizontally across the tundra at speeds that could shred unprotected skin in seconds. Another glitch in the prediction algorithms, he muttered, pulling his thermal jacket tighter. The heating systems groaned under the strain, struggling to maintain livable temperatures as the storm intensified. That's when he heard it, a sound that shouldn't exist. A cry, high-pitched and desperate, cutting through the howling wind. Alexander pressed his face against the frosted glass, squinting into the maelstrom. At first, he saw nothing but swirling white chaos. Then, a flash of pale scales caught his eye. Something small was struggling through the snow drifts near the entrance airlock, barely visible against the alabaster landscape. What the hell? He grabbed his scanner, pointing it at the movement outside. The device flickered to life, painting a thermal outline of a creature no larger than a house cat. But this was no cat. The skeletal structure showed 6 limbs, wings folded tight against its body, and a distinctly reptilian skull structure that a dragon cat. One of Kepler 442b's apex predators, albeit a juvenile. And from its coloring, or lack thereof, an albino variant, incredibly rare. The creature's body temperature was plummeting on his scanner, dropping into dangerous territory. Every regulation screamed at Alexander to leave it. Dragon cats were unpredictable, dangerous even when small. Their saliva contained neurotoxins. Their claws could punch through standard-issue colony armor. The xenobiology department had lost 2 researchers to dragon cat attacks in the past year alone. But Alexander wasn't thinking about regulations as he watched the small creature collapse into the snow, its pale wings twitching weakly. He was thinking about Anna. His sister had been the lead xenobiologist on this rock before the accident. She'd spent years studying dragon cats, fascinated by their intelligence and social structures. "They're not monsters, Alex," she'd told him countless times. "They're survivors, just like us, just trying to make it on this frozen ball in space." Anna would have saved it without hesitation. "Damn it," Alexander growled, already moving toward the airlock. He grabbed his emergency thermal suit and helmet, sealing himself in before cycling the inner door. The outer door hissed open, and the full fury of the blizzard slammed into him like a physical force. The cold was immediate and absolute, penetrating even through his suit's heating elements. He could barely see 3 feet in front of his face. Using his scanner as a guide, Alexander stumbled toward the failing thermal signature, his boots crunching through knee-deep snow. The dragon cat was half buried when he found it, its white scales camouflaged perfectly against the ice. Its 6 legs were curled beneath its body, wings spread flat in a desperate attempt to preserve heat. Crystalline ice was forming on its delicate wing membranes. "Easy there," Alexander murmured, knowing the creature couldn't hear him over the wind. He carefully scooped it up, surprised by how light it was, mostly hollow bones adapted for flight. The dragon cat didn't resist, too weak from the cold to do more than tremble in his gloved hands. Getting back to the airlock felt like miles instead of meters. By the time Alexander cycled through and stripped off his helmet, his lungs were burning from the exertion and his fingers felt numb despite the insulated gloves. The dragon cat lay motionless on the floor of the decontamination chamber, its chest barely rising and falling. Its scales, which should have been luminescent even in their albino state, were dull and frosted. Alexander carried it to the med bay, placing it gently on a warming pad designed for hypothermia treatment. He increased the temperature gradually, too fast could damage tissue, and monitored its vitals on the scanner. The creature's triple-chambered heart was beating erratically, barely pumping heat through its system. "Come on," he whispered, watching the readouts. "Don't make me regret breaking about 50 different protocols." For 3 hours, Alexander sat beside the warming pad, adjusting temperatures and monitoring the dragon cat's recovery. He thought about Anna, about her passion for understanding alien life rather than fearing it, about how humanity had spread across the stars not just as conquerors, but as witnesses to the universe's infinite diversity. Slowly, color began returning to the creature's scales. Its breathing steadied. The scanner showed its body temperature climbing back into survivable range. Then its eyes opened. They were pink, a trait of albinism, and startlingly intelligent. The dragon cat's gaze fixed on Alexander with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. This was a predator, he reminded himself, even if currently a very small and vulnerable one. But the creature didn't attack. Instead, it tilted its head, studying him with what Alexander could only describe as curiosity. It made a sound, not the aggressive hiss he'd expected, but a soft, questioning chirp. "Yeah, I saved you," Alexander said, feeling slightly foolish talking to it. "You're welcome." What happened next would change everything Alexander thought he knew about dragon cats. The creature stood on shaky legs, stretching each of its 6 limbs in turn. Then, with deliberate slowness, it approached Alexander. He held his breath, ready to retreat if necessary. But instead of attacking, the dragon cat lowered its head and pressed it gently against Alexander's hand, a gesture unmistakably similar to how Earth cats showed affection and trust. Over the following days, as the blizzard raged outside, the dragon cat, which Alexander started calling Ghost because of its white scales, displayed behaviors that contradicted everything in the xenobiology reports. It was intelligent, capable of problem-solving, and even rudimentary communication through chirps and body language. It seemed to understand that Alexander had saved it, and in response, it became fiercely protective of him. When a power surge threatened the outpost systems, Ghost detected the electrical anomaly before Alexander's instruments did, crying out in warning. When Alexander's stress levels spiked during a difficult repair, the creature would curl up nearby, its presence somehow calming. But the most unbelievable moment came on the 7th day. The storm had finally broken, and Alexander was preparing to contact the main colony about his unusual guest. That's when Ghost began acting strangely, crying and pulling at Alexander's sleeve with its mouth, trying to lead him somewhere. Following the agitated creature, Alexander found himself in the outpost's communication array room. Ghost was pawing at a specific panel, one that housed the long-range transmitter. Alexander opened it and found the source of Ghost's concern. A critical cooling line had cracked, leaking cryogenic fluid. In another hour, it would have frozen the entire communication system, leaving Alexander completely isolated that a malfunction his sensors hadn't detected. A disaster only Ghost's superior thermal sense had perceived. "You little genius," Alexander breathed. Immediately beginning repairs that as he worked, Alexander realized what Anna had known all along. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't dominating alien worlds. It was the capacity for compassion that transcended species. The willingness to see intelligence and worth in beings completely unlike themselves. He'd let a freezing alien into his house on a frozen world. That alien had just saved his life in return. When Alexander finally sent his report to the colony, including full documentation of Ghost's intelligence and behavior, it sparked a revolution in humanity's approach to dragon cats. Within months, new protocols were established, not for elimination, but for coexistence and study. And Ghost? The small albino dragon cat became the first of its kind to be recognized not as a threat, but as proof that in the vast coldness of space, warmth could be found in the most unexpected places. All because one human had looked at a freezing creature and chose compassion over protocol. That, more than any weapon or technology, was what made humanity truly formidable among the stars. Yindi.